Hey everybody, this is going to be my in-depth review of the Devil May Cry anime on Netflix. It's gonna be an ugly one too, let me tell you. So, what we're gonna do is I watched the whole series, and throughout the series, I took point by point notes of what I wanted to talk about today. Now, before I get into it, I do want to let you all know I was a long time fan of this series. Still am. The games, of course. I grew up in Devil May Cry. I grew up on Legend of Zelda. In my later years, I discovered The Witcher 3. Now, you have a little bit of knowledge about my background. I will also tell you that I remember when I was a child, and my father brought me home for, I believe, Christmas an Xbox 360. And he brought me home one game, and that game was Devil May Cry 4. And I remember getting the Red Ring of Death, probably like some of you. And it was honestly worth. Let's be real, it was so worth. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go over point by point notes I took during this watch along, I guess you would call it, because I would constantly pause, write what I thought. I came up with about 70 something notes throughout the entire watch along, so this is going to be how I pinpoint my review on this series, and at the end of the video you can tell me what you think, if you agree with me, if not. But otherwise, we're going to hop right into what I have today to discuss with you. So let me know, though, if you agree with any of these points that I'm about to make, and I might also dive into some of the comments I got on my recent video, which covered the whole catastrophe, if you want to call it, where Ruben Langdon was not voicing Dante. Instead, we have Johnny Bosch, the voice of Nero. Now, I've got a video of that on my channel. It's short but sweet if you want to go check that out real quick before you watch this. That video takes place before I watched the series. Here I am now, I've watched it. So we're going to go ahead and hop into my thoughts now. Alright, I just want to point out that I thought the intro with the rabbit was okay. It was compelling, it gave you the, I guess, descriptor of what you could expect. It was a solid intro. We got to see some violence, some blood and guts, all those beautiful things Devil May Cry like. I'd like to follow it up with the fact that Dante would not have immediately went to slaughter an innocent child, even if it were a demon, without being sure that there wasn't a way to reverse whatever effect it was under, or something to help the kid. This is very obvious in the Devil May Cry original anime series, where Dante, dealing with the, I forget what episode it is, maybe I should do a review of that series, but where he was alluding to the fact that the demon was in love with a human girl, and he actually realized that some demons can be good. I don't think Dante would have instantly went to slaughter a child in front of a mother who believed that baby to be hers. I just think it was entirely out of character. I'd like to follow that up with the fact that the show immediately follows up with a scene portraying political talking points, like far left or blaming the Russians for the situation at hand in regards to technology being the demons. Then they, out of nowhere, switch to a podcaster reacting to the news who has a southern accent and who is defending the Russians. I suppose this is supposed to portray the right wing or MAGA because it is Netflix, so let's not kid ourselves. Moving on. Again, the rabbit scene where the government was watching surveillance is good. However, involving the government this early into the story, despite zero of it being canon, feels so unnecessary. A stronger focus on the dark and monotone story would have done much better, which is something I think the original anime did a little bit. If you notice, the color contrast, which is something I'll talk about in this video, between the original Devil May Cry anime really aligned with the games, as in 1, 2, and 3 in particular, which 3 being the highlight of the series for most, 5 arguably in comparison. I think the lighting effects of the original series was so much better. Honestly, the original anime, to me, at the beginning of this video, I do want to let you know, I think is far superior. I think it's far superior as to lore, accuracy, Dante himself. The anime captured that Devil May Cry essence while being more of a Resident Evil 4 rescue story in regards to a character like Ashley and the girl in Devil May Cry anime, the original. So that was kind of bittersweet. It would have been more interesting to see something, but let's focus on this anime. So I think bringing in the government this early was a bit of a mistake. Canonically, it doesn't really make sense. Moving on, the initial Strawberry Sundae scene is on point with Dante's character, I think. I think that scene was one of the few moments in the show, which there's about 2 or 3 only, where we see Dante as you would expect. Now, moving on, it's also early on, it's noticeably difficult to take his guns seriously, which aren't even ebony and ivory, and the sounds are like a pellet gun running off of a CO2 cartridge. It's just overall weak and unbelievable, to be honest. I think they could have done a much better job with the sound cues. Maybe they're saving it for when he finally has ebony and ivory in a future season, which, by the way, I hope this show doesn't get a second season. You can see where I'm going with this review already. The dancing scene was accurate, definitely Dante-styled as far as fun goes. Little kind of throw in where he's playing the dance game. I forgot what it's called, but pretty accurate. He was shit at it, well shit actually, which really makes sense if you want to really be honest. Dante was never much of a gambler, never much of a success when it came to anything except for demon slaying, which in this show he's actually quite the failure at. So, moving on. Now, the show's outro, while being thematic, and it does scratch a part of my itch, should have transitioned into something much heavier, as the original track did. Now, if you remember in Devil May Cry 3, the original track was beautiful. It really was. And then it transitioned into this fucking thing that just grabbed hold of your chest and said, "Come here, motherfucker." It doesn't really fit the bright, light-heartedly tone of this show whatsoever, which is one of my biggest problems so far. Now, this is where the end of my notes are for the first episode. So, $500,000 for Dante. That's what the American government will offer up for what they would presume to be an obviously demon-related threat. That seems very strange to me. I just wanted to throw that in there. Now, my first major complaint is about when I'm 35 minutes into the series, a little bit into episode 2. Where the hell is the canon supposed to be for this show? The government is already customized ammunition to penetrate demons and take them out. Lady is affiliated with the government, which is a big slap in the fucking mouth towards her character and personality from the game series. I'll give an example. Even in the original anime, she was very reserved and a very lone wolf type. Up until the point she knew she needed Dante to take down that roadster demon, and followed up by the ending to take down Abigail. Up until that point, though, she was mostly a lone wolf. And now you're telling me she's dressed in Power Ranger gear, working for the federal government with a ragtag group of Overwatch cosplayers, and who has become her own cosplayer at that. Nah, I highly doubt it. Lady flew solo, and only was in connection to one other person besides Dante in the original show, and that one person helped fashion her weaponry, so it did make sense. I have a big problem with this. This is a complete gut of her character, which, to be honest, in this show, there's not much character to be had anyways. Now I'm going to go into many small details. Here's one of them. Dante telling the guy that the reason he set him up was due to the giant rabbit, and him being like, well, that checks out, was pretty ironic and pretty much in character depending on the game version of Dante, so that passes. I will say they nailed the design of Dante's mother. Absolutely what you would imagine. I've got no gripe with that. Now, the initial fight between Dante and the mercenaries wasn't bad. It was overall good. The best choreography so far, and the initial demon fights were easily the worst and most predictable, especially in the cellar when he's fighting that blue guy. Very obvious choreography. You can kind of see it coming before the fight even started. It was just kind of throw it out there. Hey, look, Dante's action-packed, fast this, dodge that, you know. Thought it was kind of pretty obvious, I'll say that. But, you know, after the initial fight, we're back at looking at the Overwatch cosplayers again. And it's just hard to take this show serious already. I mean, the color scheme on this show is terrible. And then we're followed up by a horrible recap told by Lady, as she inserts F-bomb here every other word, while a dog shit track plays in the background, which is another one of my biggest gripes with this show, is the music tracks is absolutely terrible. Outside of the end credits music, the entire soundtrack thus far of the series is absolutely horrible and sounds like it should have never been inserted. It sounds like something out of Cyberpunk 2077, and this isn't me defending the Devil's Never Cry spin-off track, it's just at least better than anything else the show has thus far. Even though I know a lot of fans I've heard are not happy with the remix track at the end of the episodes, at least it resembles the games a tad, which is something I don't understand. Why couldn't we bring in more of the game soundtracks? Clearly they had the rights. They had the rights to Devil's Never Cry. Why couldn't they bring in more of those kick-ass soundtracks and really capture the gaming audience? Because at the end of the day, this was for the gamers. This wasn't for your fucking average everyday anime watchers. You're trying to grab the gaming audience. And that is what this show fails at again and again. And it's right around this time I find myself asking once more, which is something I ask multiple times and I'll bring it up. But at this particular point, followed up by this recap from Lady, I ask myself, where the fuck is this timeline in the series? Where are we as far as events throughout what we canonically know as Devil May Cry? Why is Lady so hellbent on working for the federal government? Which again is outside of her character. This is before Devil May Cry 3, since Dante is unaware of Virgil's survival, as well as the fact we can reference the manga in regards to the Demon Rabbit, but it's almost like a fan fiction what-if story. What if Lady, instead of being a damaged recluse, literally psychologically destroyed by her upbringing, instead was an edgy 16-year-old girl working for the federal government because fuck it. That's what I'm feeling at this point. It's worth mentioning, too, that after Dante punches a guy so hard his face folds inside out through a brick wall, that we're supposed to believe that humans in this world are just as durable as the fucking demons. I've wanted to mention this since the beginning of the mercenaries fighting, but I didn't want to nitpick. But at this point, it's ridiculous and moving beyond what you'd excuse for anime action. And what is it with this shit with Dante not realizing he isn't a demon or part demon? Really? This is where we're going with this? Dante never had issues accepting what he was. He was never proud of it, though, and it showed early on in the games. Especially in the beginning of Devil May Cry 1, when he had his initial run-in with Trish, he wasn't in denial, but viewed it as it is what it is, and ultimately, that's the nonchalantness way he carries himself on most subjects across the games. Not this in-denial bullshit and being unable to fit a circular puzzle piece because he's forcing it into the fucking triangle slot. This sounds stupid, but so does him thinking he's somehow human. Lady casually takes a point-blank explosion from a grenade off of a small building in trying to separate herself from Dante and proceeds to casually roll across her ribs on the cement, in no way landing believably safely. Again, the humans seem as durable as the demons in this adaptation of the series, which is fucking ironic and ridiculous. And look, it's such a bad take, because the one thing everybody loved about her character was her humanity. The fact she indeed was a skilled demon hunter, but she was no Dante, and nor Trish for that matter. But she tried and used the trauma from her past to drive herself forward into the abyss that is hunting demons. And this show doesn't capture her humanity at all. And while I'm only 2 episodes in, I don't think it's going to. It's worth noting in the original anime, Lady couldn't defeat Trish. And she more so played cat and mouse until Dante stepped in to save Lady from being harmed by Trish, who admittedly was probably just toying with her. She already knew kinda who she was. But here we've got a human casually taking grenades to the face and rolling across her ribs from a 30-foot drop on cement, and thus far eluding the same Dante capable of defeating Argosax and Mundus. To elaborate on this further, the reason why this is so problematic is it's hard to balance Dante. And if you watch the original anime, it's almost meme-worthy how he walks through every enemy without a care in the world, because Dante and his universe is ridiculously overpowered, and this is canon. And this isn't necessarily bad, as in the original anime, it painted Dante in a very lonely light. Especially in the outros, being unable to make friendships or allies that would at least stick around longer than 5 minutes, which is apparent with how Trish and Lady were to him. He was much a loner. And this affected him, and that's what the whole outro showed, was him sitting there with a Jack Daniels whiskey bottle, thinking of his past, his brother, his family, everything he had lost. You connected with him. That humanity in that character showed more than this adaptation, which is just like a, hey, I'm Goku and I'm half stupid adaptation. And being totally isolated, as he's pretty much on his own. And as far as power levels, and his personality, a scale which nobody could meet him on, and probably led to more of an isolated feeling being who he was. And this will be elaborated on later into this video. So at this point, I'm reaching the end of episode 2. And the fact that we've already seen Dante defeated by a group of Overwatch cosplayer mercenaries tells me everything I need to know about this show already, but we'll see moving forward, I suppose, alongside Lady hitting Dante with a word motherfucker before the outro kicks in with Devils Never Cry. Pretty much a perfect follow-up to the cuckening that has been Dante's character thus far. This is the part where, as the fans, we sit back jaw-dropped and figure out how in the fuck Adi Shankar could fuck this up so badly. I will say, though, the Raccoon City Easter egg in episode 3 was a nice nod at the origin of the franchise. If you didn't know, Devil May Cry 1 was originally going to be Resident Evil 4, which is why Leon and Dante look so similar. Now, the game ended up being so far outside of the realm of Resident Evil that they took that design and that format and turned it into the Devil May Cry franchise. So a little fun fact, if you didn't know, that Easter egg was nice. Now, we see a scene where scientists are analyzing Dante's amulet. Again, the timeline blows my mind here. We have to assume, due to Dante and Lady's age, that our government just somehow figured out how to analyze all of this shit in maybe a couple of years, perhaps 5 or 6 max. I call bullshit. And anyways, the vice president guy played by Batman is literally talking about harnessing Dante's demonic power for literally no intentions other than purely evil. And Lady just goes along with it, despite literally looking concerned, realizing what's at stake. Completely out of character. And here I've got LOL written, Agni and Rudra, and the plant boss Echidna from Devil May Cry 4 and possibly Cavalier Angelo. Am I watching a fucking fan fiction? Or was there knowledge behind the scenes that this show wasn't going to get more than a single season because of how bad it is? Agni and Rudra truly paint a picture of how bad the animation department was when creating this. They look like something out of the Powerpuff Girls, and this show needed a grittier, darker tone to do well. Think maybe Tokyo Ghoul or something along the lines of some of the darker episodes in a franchise like Inuyasha. And that's just my opinion. Now, 90% of this show's action thus far has been Lady doing all of the heavy lifting. I can see why people said this is her show and not Dante's in my comment section. What do you expect from Netflix after an IP like The Witcher was less about Geralt of Rivia and solely about Yennefer and Ciri and these boss babes? Mind you, Lady is just casually taking on 3 bosses from the games. Agni and Rudra and Echidna. Again, humans are on the same level as demons in this adaptation. Let's not forget, in the other anime, how Lady couldn't even take down the Roadster Demon. The motorcycle for those who don't remember. But yes, casually taking on 3 boss demons from different games. Like, fuck it. Now, somehow, the unrelenting demons from hell allow Lady to live, with the most anti-climactic to an ending to a Devil May Cry fight of all time. Because fuck it, we've gotta go, followed by some Papa Roach, which I admittedly respect. Now, seeing Dante debilitated by a device in his body is an insult to his character's strength and durability, and the implication that the government technology being able to affect a demon of his magnitude in probably a handful of years of research is continuously insulting. Now, episode 4 opens up showcasing female empowerment, with our boy Dante down for the count due to epic technology the government managed in a handful of years. And our girl Lady is on the move because, once again, it's her show, and she's commanding the Overwatch cosplay squad. Truly amazing, followed by Dante being cucked once again after being captured by humans, is now captured by demons due to the grandness of the federal government technology. Lol. I literally wrote that in colons. Lol. Laugh out loud. I think you all agree, though. Now, we see the Overwatch cosplay squad get fucking yoked, which was quite glorious, if I may say. But of course, Lady escapes because plot armor for the main character is necessary. Now, Dante seemingly being explained about how his father was the good demon who betrayed his own kind and is receiving emotional support from his human buddy, and somehow even Agni and Rudra feel like his friends in this scene, it's just fucking weird. You know who doesn't need anything explained? Lady, of course, because she's a girl boss babe. I just wanted to remind you all of that fact in case you forgot. Now, something important some of you may have missed up until this point throughout the show is we're about 4 episodes in out of the 8 that the series has, and I just want to remind you all that throughout the entirety of this show so far, Dante has pretty much been captured. For the entirety of the show thus far, halfway through the series, he has been captured by humans and now demons, and he's pretty much sitting in his own little corner at the back of the show, giving Lady the complete spotlight. He hasn't done anything at this point. And I do want to mention, am I missing something here during the fight with Agni and Rudra? How... Now, I could be wrong, but Dante has been shown to be able to recall his sword rebellion to him, but I guess they passed that ability on to Lady because she recalls her fucking handguns. But we don't see Dante do that with his demonic blade whatsoever, I believe, in the entirety of this show. And by the way, where is Ebony and Ivory? Just a little side note there. And lastly, the scene where Dante is knocked down by Agni, I believe it's trying to be emotional. But the animation of this series just doesn't do it justice, and the soundtrack, again, it's just a major letdown altogether. It doesn't work on screen. It doesn't feel like it should be emotional, but it's telling you that it is, and it's forcing you to think that it is, but it just doesn't work. And I think that Agni and Rudra, in my opinion, have really bad voice actors. As in, the vocals for them just is horrible, and their chemistry as brothers has lacked thus far. And Agni's death felt really weak and lackluster in comparison to what we've seen in the game. Now, here's where I can give a positive to the series. The action sequence of Dante falling out of the plane is probably, up until this point at least, the greatest scene in the entire show. I think it's the only time we've caught any semblance of the real Dante, from the choreography and camera shots of him running across the falling debris. Think of Devil May Cry 4 when he's fighting the Savior statue. It really did resemble him. Now, this is one of my biggest issues again right here. Do not tell me that Echidna got taken down by a handful of MacGuffin bullets from Lady. Are you fucking kidding me? And as a matter of fact, Echidna is probably one of the worst demons to bring into this season because we're dealing with the rabbit's warehouse or factory. I don't know, wouldn't it have been better to put her in a fucking jungle, maybe? I mean, come on. The placement just doesn't work for that character at all. And Dante's Devil Trigger soundtrack is utter dog shit. Am I in a cyberpunk nightclub? Also, the body isn't the worst, but the face looks like the red fucking Power Ranger. This show is trying so hard to make you feel goosebumps, similarly to when Dante engaged his Sin Devil Trigger in Devil May Cry 5, but it fails from atmosphere, storytelling, animation, soundtrack, lackluster characters. The only redeeming character in the show for me has been the rabbit thus far, and that's even above Dante, and the only reason the rabbit is any good is the pure mystery behind him. Every character feels like a fucking NPC, including Dante. Now, the fight with Rudra has the worst soundtrack thus far, in my opinion. Again, why is the fight taking place during daylight, too? This shot would have been so much better contrast in the night, showcasing Dante's form with some sort of aura. But instead, we've got a perfect sunny day that just feels so out of place. And there's no impact in the atmosphere at all. Where's the lightning? Where's the splashes of raw demonic energy in the sky? Why is the sky so fucking blue when we've got 2 mega demons battling it out? And why the hell is Dante boxing in Devil Trigger and not sending out demonic energy? Why is he completely in control? Do you remember in Devil May Cry 3 when he activated his Devil Trigger and was a true monster? The demon within took control and Virgil was impressed. And in this version, Dante seemingly has absolute control over his demonic blood, which was something that never took place. Think of when he went after Virgil, he completely lost control in that moment. And Virgil dipped off the fucking building or whatever, you know? Dante was a complete monster in that moment. He lost control. That demonic blood fueled him, took over his humanity. We didn't see that at all in this. It never took place, but it's clear to everybody at this point that this is Adi Shankar's fan fiction story, and apparently he's a colossal fucking simp for Lady, since it's really her show. She's had easily 3/4 of the screen time across her and Dante combined. Now, Lady would never this early on in her story arc have ever, and I mean ever, forgiven or even the slightest notion viewed demons as anything other than true, benevolent evil, as she did Dante for a long time. Rushed character development or just development in general, her character is bland and has no personality and doesn't resemble Lady in the slightest. Not to mention her attire as an Overwatch cosplayer is dog shit. We needed proper heroines to make this show work, along with a darker undertone. We needed the version of Lady with big tits. And I'm not kidding. You take the atmosphere of Devil May Cry 1, character development from 3, character designs from 4, and you would have had the greatest version of this anime. Debatably, Dante, you could have picked 3 because he's a younger version of himself, but outside of that, I do think this absolutely. So now Lady shows up and takes out Rudra in an absolute kill steal, followed by the scene and narrative instantly through her perspective and an investigation of the rabbit, showcasing that this is in fact Lady's show and not Dante's. It's also very impressive how dumb they've made Dante, incredibly so. He's received the Goku dumbed down punishment that Super gave him, but it's worse, because Goku had always been somewhat of a knucklehead, but when needed would rise to the occasion. Thus far, Dante hasn't risen to shit. And only through forced, meaningless plot has he accomplished anything, including his Devil Trigger, which was astonishingly bad. Of course, we get this radio broadcast video from the rabbit, and guess who takes charge against the villain? Lady, of course. Yep, Dante says almost nothing and is more than happy to take a backseat and allow Lady to be the one who is the I am woman, hear me fucking roar type of broad. Don't worry though, because Lady's cracked the code and solved the fact that the rabbit needed Dante to activate his Devil Trigger so he'd have the blood or some matching shit to Sparta. And in proper Dante fashion, he keeps quiet, knowing his place in this anime is the cuck chair. This opening segment in episode 6, who the fuck is the target audience for the show, I find myself asking? Is it Devil May Cry fans or Teen Titans Go fans? This shit is horrible, and once again, we get this flashback look at Lady's childhood for the second time. Meanwhile, we've seen Dante for less than 10 seconds at a time, opposed to these scenes that play out for 5 minutes or longer of flashbacks for Lady instead. Now, did I say 5 minutes because I wrote that about 5 minutes into that episode? Sorry, I meant half the episode. Wait, no, I meant the whole episode of almost zero dialogue. Now, the first positive scene in regards to Lady is the witnessing of her mother being slaughtered by her father. This was well done, I thought, to be honest, and it really captures some emotion for the first time in the entire series thus far, which says a lot, but this only continues to complicate her character development because she showcases nothing that resembles a traumatic childhood because I am woman, hear me fucking roar, just isn't doing that. Now, maybe this will piss some of you off, but I think you'll understand where I'm coming from here. I couldn't watch episode 6. I skimmed through what was a Teen Titans Go spin-off that alluded to the fact in the real world immigrants are friends, and that we should be accepting of them. I assume this is Netflix sending its political ideals to us as the audience, but moving on past this disastrous episode, there he is. Nello Angelo, I presume again, what the fuck is this timeline? Virgil would never have allowed himself to take a backseat to the grand plan of the rabbit, and let's talk about the fact it's obvious that Nello Angelo isn't forced upon him, as it was in the game, as he appears to be in control of himself, which is a plot hole on par with the fucking horrible remake of the Devil May Cry original remake. We finally get the most realistic scene I've seen thus far in this series, Lady mounted on Dante, which quite literally would happen canonically, so point there. Don't worry though, because Boss Bitch is making her moves, ensuring that Dante knows his place and is still on the corner chair of the motel room. Lady then proceeds to blow his fucking kneecaps out literally and locks him up like a complete bitch. I shit you not. The mention of the cuck chair, I had no idea this was coming. But holy shit, I think I may be a natural at tarot card reading at this point. The best line of the show from the rabbit, how do you fit those balls into that skin-tight uniform, except it isn't skin-tight, and that's kind of the problem. Now, I know I've said this before, but it's astonishing how much of the show has been Lady. in the action sequences and not Dante. But don't worry, because her plot armor kicks in. Because the rabbit was about to leave through the portal instead of delivering the final blow like he did to the troops in the beginning of the series. Which is another problem with giving Lady plot armor thicker than Rambo. And why she shouldn't be the focus character, because Dante at least makes sense because he's a tough bastard to kill. Now, Dante is disarmed by Cavalier Angelo, but doesn't remember that he can recall his sword. Once again, incredible stuff we've got here. The rabbit also has a confrontation with a sword held to Lady's throat and doesn't deliver the final blow because, hear me fucking roar, plot armor kicks in. I didn't want to say it, but for a split second, it would seem that it is in fact Dante's show for the first time in the entire series, just at the end of episode 7, of course, as he defeats Cavalier Angelo, or whatever. Listen, folks, I got a huge plot twist for you here. So it would turn out that the rabbit was somewhat of a, I guess, friend of Lady's in her past, which was showcased in episode 6 with almost no dialogue. Mind you, I mostly skipped through that episode at 1.5 speed because I couldn't be fucked to watch that episode. Now it would appear, though, unlike the manga, that the rabbit is truly here to pull on the heartstrings to connect, I guess, with Lady because they had a childhood together and he apparently entered the demon realm somehow, and I guess I have no idea what happened to him from there because honestly I can't be fucked to know. But at the end of the day, this was another plot lined up to tie in Lady to the story. I would say on a notion higher than that of Dante at this point, in affiliation to this character from the original manga. So do with that knowledge as you will. Now, another kind of character break here. Now, Lady decides to trust the creepy guy who has clearly bad intentions with the Batman voice, opposed to allowing Dante to protect his amulets. And Enzo is probably the only death in the series that somewhat pulled on your heartstrings because he was a real bro in the end. And seems very fitting to finally have some kind of emotional impact. Dante being torn on living because of Virgil was the first time he acted like himself in a while, so there's a point there. Lady would never have injected Dante with that syringe. You cannot convince me that he wouldn't have turned around, caught her fucking hand, and made that pussy gush for him in that moment. No chance. I guess this ending sequence is supposed to reflect on reality of how we bomb third world countries or some shit. Whatever, I'm over it at this point. The ending scene, people, shows us that Virgil isn't honorable and has sold out completely to the demon Mundus, who literally killed his mother. And this closes out a show that I pray doesn't receive a second season. Now, that is all the notes I had for the video, people. I will say, on a few tangents here now, that one of my biggest issues was the animation. I think Agni and Rudra looked terrible. You could see them in pause frames. They looked just so bad. Like a villain out of the Powerpuff Girls, literally. The soundtrack was horrible. Episode 6 was one of the worst episodes I've ever seen in anime history. And honestly, I think this series doesn't hold up at all to the original anime, which a lot of people didn't view as a masterpiece, let's say, but it definitely held up as more true to character, I will say, on pretty much across the board. You'd have a hard time arguing that Dante was not Dante in the original anime. This anime was a complete disaster. Adi Shankar completely butchered it. I'm extremely disappointed. I didn't get too much into the fact that Nero voices Dante, which completely destroyed the whole feel of the show to me, but I got into that more in my other video, which you can check out, which is a shorter video. Now, I do want to go over some of the comments from some of my viewers who tuned into my original video because they were telling me a bit about the show before I had even watched it, but we'll take a look at that now. We've got our first comment here from DesireeLess4092. With each episode, it became worse and worse and worse. Story has nothing in common with DMC. This is yet another DMC-like reboot. Lady being insufferable, girl boss dropping F-bombs every 5 seconds, having nothing in common with the original character. Dante being a weakling that gets bullied left and right. Political allegories and current-day things that no one asked about and which felt very weird and off-putting in the show. Story being like the fan fiction you find back in the days that make the Sonic and Goku fanfics back then sound like masterpieces. Johnny being Dante's VA feels weird and out of place, especially after so many years of playing the games. No Ruben, no Dan, and no Soul. They even fucked up Rebellion's design and no Ebony and Ivory in sight, average 3 out of 10 Netflix adaptation. Oh, and the soundtrack is cringe, with probably the most pathetic Devils Never Cry cover I've ever heard. I do agree with you on pretty much everything. Do I rate it a 3 out of 10? It's got to be somewhere around there. Like, I've yet, at this point in the video, given my ultimate rating. We've got a few comments here from War Chief Venom7612. I finished watching it, pirated of course, not giving money to Netflix, and it was awful. The music and action scenes are good, but the story and characters are awful. Also, Bosch is Nero, not Dante. I didn't get used to his voice through the 8 episodes. Also, the political/social commentary about refugees and such felt so under the nose and out of nowhere. We've got a response from Ed Stop Motion. You summed it up perfectly. They want you to feel bad about demons when the games were never about that. And the only Christian character being a villain makes it clear this show was created by an Indian. I didn't actually think of that, but you're right. Now that you say that. We've got a comment from Light Inferno 4490. It was complete and utter garbage. We've got a pretty big comment here from Sebastian Butel. I can't believe so many people are claiming this show is any good. What's the point of making us try to feel bad about demons? It's the same shtick Rings of Power tried to do with the orcs. I'm really tired of this stupid trope. There's also a lot of obvious refugee talk with said weaker demons, which is an obvious allusion to current world events. This isn't Devil May Cry. The animation is very subpar, especially the 3D models. The action feels stiff. Choreography is rather meh for such stylish games, especially when you watch players such as Zero, Dongiri, and Sakaki, only to name a few. I was expecting way more in that category. Lady is the most annoying, pointless character ever in this. Her dialogues are bad, she swears way too much, and she shouldn't be able to feel like she's equal to Dante in ability. She was a badass in 3. Her story arc was excellent. It's the best game out of all of them, story-wise anyway. She initially was a bitch to Dante, as she was with everyone. But over time, she and Dante gained each other's respect, and she warmed up to him. Here, she keeps insulting him every opportunity she gets. Their relationship doesn't develop past that point, and it gets old listening to after 30 seconds, let alone 6 or 7 entire episodes. Dante doesn't feel like Dante at all. Maybe it's the voice, but it's also how he is portrayed, as constantly having trauma compared to how he usually behaves. He feels like a complete weakling in this show compared to the games. Lady would never have had the upper hand against him, even at his weakest state. He would never get captured by humans ever, and he never would need to be saved by one like when Lady killed Rudra. Dante is also not an idiot. I don't know why they give every guy the Goku syndrome in these shows. Trevor in Castlevania was also a total numbskull every now and then. When Dante is more of a sassy dude, not a one-liner kind of guy that isn't funny. He's cocky, sure, but not in the way this show portrayed him to be. The plot takes forever to go anywhere. Nothing happens most of the time. I probably said this is so dumb out loud as many times in this than in Arcane's second season, either because of a character's action, dialogue, or both. Finally, Dante's Devil Trigger design looks terrible. I will actually give 0/10 as my final verdict. I find no redeeming qualities to this show. It's as if corporations are actively sabotaging every great franchise to humiliate or lower cultural value or whatever it feels. Just absolutely lame. You were completely right. And maybe you felt this for a while, but a lot of us have felt this for a long time. Maybe you're finally feeling it now. Because when something happens to a franchise like this, which I grew up on in my childhood, you really open your eyes to it. I've known this for a while. This is just another one domino that fell in the effect that is Hollywood and all these corporate companies today that are losing so much money. Look at Snow White. Now, this gentleman responded to my comment. I replied to him, "They are. I will use your post in my future deep dive video as well." He says, "You may. It's my first time watching your channel, and I'm glad to have found it. And while I do understand the position I guess you take, doesn't make these creators much money, and so the message gets buried, I sincerely believe we simply obtain what we tolerate in life, and that also includes entertainment. My critic of this series is in probably vain, but oh well. Hope that we may obtain better material from the people who decide to adapt said worlds. I sincerely adore the Devil May Cry franchise ever since I played it back in 2005. I can probably cite most of 3 by memory, as it's my personal favorite, and I consider this to be a big travesty to the franchise's name, as the animated Castlevania series and the Cowboy Bebop live-action crap were to their respective IPs. I agree. I'm looking forward to watching your deep dive video in the future. We deserve better than this, and I'm pretty sure there's a reason why they want to indirectly tarnish, or at the very least humiliate our childhood and teen heroes with these pathetic reimaginings. Godspeed, man. We've got a comment from Yoster39 replying, "Would you believe me? The same happened with Castlevania, and nobody believed me because the lore is way more hidden. And guess who is responsible for that? Yep, the same person." We've got another comment from SNK Nero 9935. Netflix ruined both Castlevania and Devil May Cry. We've got another comment from Lord Apex Y2K. "I saw the first 2 episodes," he says. "The first 15 minutes were solid. Dante's intro and the White Rabbit sequence were great, but then Dante starts acting like this weird, awkward loser explaining his humor to the lady he just saved. That's not the confident badass we know. After that, we get bogged down with a ton of boring exposition and a pointless Virgil fake-out. The whole government subplot really drags things down too. Look, I'm all for a good story, but the pacing goes from 0 to 100. With all of this info dumping, the government stuff just feels out of place. This isn't the X-Files. Also, how does the lady not realize her quote-unquote child is trying to kill Dante? What even happened to her? By episode 2, I'm pretty annoyed. Dante is not supposed to be harming humans, yet here he is paralyzing and possibly killing those mercenaries. That feels straight out of Batman Arkham Knight, which works as a gameplay mechanic but definitely shouldn't be canon in the story. And Lady, I get they want her to be tough, but the constant swearing is already grating. She's coming off more like a supervillain than a badass, and the Task Force stuff just makes her come off as a completely different character, similar to what I said too. That is not Lady." Got another comment from Darkspine Gaming 97. "I just got finished watching it all, and to be honest, it started off so well and quite promising at first. Like, sure, I didn't mind some differences and changes to the lore, but the further in I got, it then decided to get quite religiously fueled and political, and that kind of ruined it for me. Like, all of this America is glorious and the best nation in the world, or the whole holy war on hell bullshit, like, nah, that kind of ruined it. Also, they absolutely ruined Dante because, not gonna lie, Nero's voice actor just doesn't work for me or do it justice at all for Dante. Like, no disrespect to the guy because Johnny is an amazing voice actor, but he doesn't fit Dante at all because all I heard was Nero talking. Another point is, they also ruined Dante by making him essentially a nerfed side character to Lady. Like, Lady kicks his ass on every occasion they meet, and also they kind of dumbed him down, like the way, and made him an idiot. This show was 100% a show about Lady with Dante as a side piece. Also, Virgil, oh boy, here's where it really kicked my irritation up to 11. Okay, so I get the dude was Nello Angelo in the games and all that, but having him already be Nello Angelo in the anime, me was okay, kinda, but then they showed him at the end and had him transform back into his normal self, as if he is simply choosing to side with Mundus and is well aware of how he is acting out his orders, despite the fact when in the games and its lore, it's supposed to be that Virgil is brainwashed and mind-controlled and lost control of his body and mind and thus become Mundus's puppet. But the anime has decided to make Virgil pure evil to the core and willingly following the orders of a known tyrant such as Mundus, which goes against his whole character, because the whole reason Virgil wants power is because he failed to protect his mother as a boy, thus leading him to view himself and his humanity as weak, and then that whole thing causes him to have a hatred for Mundus, and so on, which is why he tries to fight him at the end of DMC 3, but loses and becomes the puppet Nello Angelo. Honestly, the anime had so much potential, but then gave into political bullshit and made other unfaithful changes that, from what I have seen, has definitely shook some fans. Honestly, it could have been so much better. It really could have. We've got a response comment from Dinko Man 2081. "Bro, director of these Netflix series based on video games follow lore halfway and then turn into fan fiction with modern bullshit. Dude says he's a fan of the DMC series and another video game series. I don't believe it at all. The guy is a hack writer, needs popular existing IPs for his cringe fan fictions. 100%. Got another comment from the Traveler 4839. "So they gave Dante the Richter Belmont treatment. I'm not surprised since that poser Shankar is involved. He's just as much responsible for ruining Castlevania as Wallace Ellis, Dietz, etc." Now I've got to give it my rating. I'm going to separate this into 2 categories. If you're a fan of the game and you came here expecting a good Devil May Cry product, it is easily a 1 out of 10. There is nothing here, anything here, that is of any merit to you as a Devil May Cry fan. Now, if you're an avid anime watcher and you just enjoy watching anime here and there on the go, I could see this being a 3 out of 10 at the highest, and for me, still probably a 2 out of 10, even in that light, if I wasn't an already fan. Now, I'm going to go into some of the biggest problems real quick. There's so many of them, and I could go on and on and on and on and on. But my biggest issue is the color theme for the show. It's too vibrant. It's way too vibrant. If you look at the original anime and you look at the video games, this show is like literally, and I keep saying it, an Overwatch animated series. And it sounds crazy to say that, but it is. Look, let me give you an example. In the beginning of the show, when Dante is captured, and it's almost like the demons and the humans are both after him at the same time. Well, the humans have him in the moment. The demons attack. You get what I'm saying. To me, the cast of characters, the demons look goofy as hell, and Lady's entire squad looked like a bunch of characters from Overwatch again. And then it's almost like they're fighting over Dante like he's the moving objective on the map. And I know that's just what I felt, and I'm just being honest. And moving past that, the soundtrack was terrible. Now, the original anime didn't have the same songs from the video game. However, the difference was the original anime kind of adapted its own take on the music and actually did a fairly good job. Actually, really good. Now, this anime had rights and licensing to certain tracks like Devils Never Cry, and it hardly ever used it. Had Bury the Light at the end, we seen with Virgil, so we have to assume that they probably could have gotten more music from the original games and imported it. I mean, why the hell not? We imported every boss from every different game out of nowhere, and I think we even seen the guy show up from Devil May Cry 2 at the end of the anime, which I kind of didn't say anything about. I forgot his name, but he's the dude with the mustache or whatever, ruggy looking guy. Anyways, the soundtrack, again, we couldn't import anything from the games, really. Shall Never Surrender from 4, nothing. The music was terrible. It was like Tetris on steroids. It was just horrible, and it didn't fit the tone of the show at all. At least the tone that the show needed to be successful. And another gripe I have is no Ebony and Ivory. He's using some regular man-made handguns that fall apart after using them for a little while, and they literally sound, if you've ever fired a BB gun with a CO2 cartridge, it sounds like that. If you listen to the original anime, when Dante is firing his Ebony and Ivory, it is like a stampede of thumb, It is, that shot is meaningful. In this, it sounds like he's just sending toothpicks at his enemies. It's just weak. It's really weak. And we could have had better sound effects, sound cues, and those are very important in these kinds of action stylized shows. While the original anime may not have had so much action, it focused a lot more on the monotone, darker storytelling, which actually I appreciated very much. And I'll probably do a video on that series at some point now that this came out. Now, this is probably one of my biggest complaints, and I know I keep saying that, but that's because there's just so many. We never even got to see Dante do his tornado technique where he's in the air with his guns, flailing, shooting. It's like, where was any of these choreography moments that the creators of the video games came up with? There's so many movesets in the Devil May Cry franchise. The work has already been laid there for you. All you had to do was go in there, look at it, analyze it, take it, put it in this scene, put it in that scene, put it in that scene. Make Dante stand out as Dante. But instead, you wanted to do your own twist because, again, you wanted to do your own fan fiction, and that's terrible. You're not going to create a successful story like that on an IP like this. You're just not. Because while Devil May Cry was Action Game of the Year for Part 5, it's a very popular game. You're trying to draw in that gaming audience who are big fans of the game, particularly ones who have been there for years like me. And you're not going to draw us in with this kind of subpar action sequences. While it's high action, it's not interesting action at all. The choreography for a lot of the fights was pretty bad, I'd say. Especially the demon fights. Most of those were a complete letdown, opposed to some of the actual human fights, which I thought were a little better. And it's just, again, why are humans as durable as fucking demons in this world? Anyways, and their endurance. But yes, all the work was already laid out. Brilliant, talented people laid out the foundation for the proper choreography to put in some epic moments of Dante flailing around and about, and we have the movesets from the video games. You could have just copy-pasted them. I'm starting to rant. I'm going to leave it there. You get the point. I could keep going on and on and on, but I shouldn't. It'll go on too long. So this is where I'll end this discussion. So this video was more of what the hell was wrong with the series. There might be a more philosophical talk, deep dive video coming. This may have been it. We'll see what I kind of come up with in my head thinking about the series moving forward, as I have just digested it all today, had a chance to absorb it, give it my thought. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, leave a like. Let me know what you thought about it, because I do like reading comments, and I do typically like and respond to pretty much all of them for the most part. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day, night, whatever it is, and let's hope that we get a Devil May Cry 6, because from what I've researched, and I'll make a video on this, it seems to me like the studio who is behind the games are okay with Ruben. They've come out pretty much and said they've got no gripe with him. So hopefully we will see Ruben Langdon reprise his role as Dante in a future game. But as far as the anime adaptation goes from Adi Shankar, it is a total blowout disaster. Now, you guys take care.